Hello, and welcome back to Talent Thrives Here, our podcast where we talk to people managing people. Our special guest today is Massimo Backus. Massimo is a management consultant. He's a leader. He does one-on-one coaching and team coaching. He's recently written a book called Human First, Leaders Second. One of the Amazon reviews on his book says Massimo Backus clearly illustrates the power of perspective and reframing, utilizing self-compassion as a tool for success. Massimo, welcome to our show today. We're happy to have you on.
Happy to be here, Lance.
Massimo, you and I, and probably everyone we know, is watching the sort of changing economy and the changing workplace. And there's a lot of sort of moving parts right now. Nothing sort of stays the same for more than, it seems like, 6 months to a year. You know, we're seeing AI and we're seeing layoffs. Um, how is it impacting the world that you work with and your clients and the people that you know? Give us some perspective from your position.
I've just noticed throughout my network that more and more incredibly talented, hardworking career professionals are finding themselves in a position where they're blindsided by a layoff. There's uncertainty of what their next opportunity is going to be. But they're also starting to ask themselves a question of what do I want the next opportunity to be?
Right.
Maybe they enjoyed many aspects of their previous role, but there were a lot of things about it that led them to burnout or a lot of self-doubt. They've been stuck in, imposter syndrome for so long. And they view it as a break, and they're trying to figure out how to be intentional at this time and potentially use it as an opportunity to create a new identity or evolve.
Right.
Given the contextual factors that are going on, I think there's a call for all of us to kind of be on our toes and evolve and recognize that the way things have been are not how things are going to be in the future. And what does that mean? How does that impact us? And yet, how do we still do work that is purpose driven, that contributes in a meaningful way, that connects us to community? Those are the factors that everyone cares about.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think I mentioned to you before at one point when we were having a chat. I have an old boss from way back, and he had this line: "You're locked in at 40, you're locked out at 45." That was his little thing, and I asked him to explain that, and he said, if you're clever along the way up in your 30s or early 40s, you amass some stock or equity or something in the business where it's harder for them to displace you if they have to. You're going to get a payout of some sort. But he said, if you don't, at some point, probably mid 40s, 45 was his number, they will lock you out, i.e., they'll replace you by two people in their 20s or 30s and coming up. So there was, in his mind, it was just a cycle. And it was kind of as old as, as the Industrial Revolution. So he didn't lose any sleep over it. He just said, and we were in a recruiting agency at the time, and he said, most of our clients are going to come to us for someone in their early to mid 30s, occasionally 40-ish. But he said, that's kind of the sweet spot for our agency. And every once in a while, we get an executive search that comes in, they're looking for someone older than that. But he said, 90% of our brackets right there in that age group. And I think that's still sort of relevant today. But I think the thing that's challenging it is, AI, when we see Microsoft laying off 6,000 people a few weeks back. And there was a quote that Microsoft has something like between 20 or 30% of their codes now being written by their own AI tools. And so it's a concern, I think, not only for me, you, probably for almost everyone that our neighbors, are the people that we know. There's going to be less need. There's going to be greater sort of speed and efficiency in places. We can query data much faster. But I also wonder, a lot of these sort of, let's say, back office jobs, whether it was accounting, customer service, call centers, that was all going the last 25, 30 years off to India or the Philippines or somewhere. And I'm wondering how that impact as well, because some of those jobs will disappear as well, because they'll be done by AI, or they'll be done
Yeah.
quicker by AI. We'll need less humans. So it feels to me like a bit of a perfect storm, in the sense that we've got this technology's finally caught up with the rest of us, and it's going to displace a bunch of folks. We've also got, if you look at the demographics, a good chunk of the population is over 45 years of age. And they're greatly skilled. They have a great background, but companies don't seem to be saying that's the sweet spot. It's like they're aging out, if I could say that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And at that, in that sweet spot, kind of call it the midlife period, there's an opportunity to um, do an inventory on the identity that has been developed up to that point. And, in Carl Jung's work, he would say that those that are in the midlife period finally step into an opportunity for individuation, where we finally separate ourselves from our ego, but we integrate the ego as opposed to being driven by it. And that ego is
Right.
oftentimes the thing that we can credit with our early career success, that fear of being found out as an imposter, the needing to be perfect, the needing to people please is a very effective driver and motivator and gets us to a place of success. But it comes at a cost. And it's often when you get to the source of burnout for people, it's driven by those tendencies. And so if you view this as not necessarily something that is just happening to you, or that this AI revolution is happening to me and we're victims of it, but view it as the weather, which is I live in Seattle, and on any given day it could be sunny one minute and then a torrential downpour the next. I can't change the weather, but I can
Right.
certainly choose what I do based on the weather, and kind of organize my day and my energy around that. And that's what's happening around us. This is a change in the weather. And
Right.
the first step that people need to take is to recognize if you're holding on to an old identity that is not going to exist in the future, then you need to let that go. But what it presents is an opportunity to create a new identity. And Lance, when you and I were younger, like most people, we were dreamers. We weren't
Right.
knocked down by life, and we had big ideas and ambitions. I remember in high school, I really wanted to have a talk show. I was like, someday I'm going to be a talk show host, but it's going to be a cooking talk show. This was before the Food Network took off. That was going to be my thing. I had all these other ideas. And I found that when I entered the corporate world, my ability to innovate and think creatively about my identity and what I could do in the world continued to get shaped and kind of constrained
Right.
into what that hierarchical structure told me I could be and what the opportunities in front of me. And yet, since leaving corporate 5 years ago and stepping into entrepreneurship, that creative, idea of the possible has come alive again. And yes, AI is the weather that's changing things, but AI is also the weather that says, hey, there's snow outside. We can either complain about it or we can go outside and sled, right?
Right.
Go play in the
Right.
snow. And you can start any kind of business with AI faster,
Sure.
cheaper than you ever could before.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think that you got to be able to let go of the old identity, which is a very scary thing to do. But if you can let go of that anchor, it will free you up to attach to some other new possibility and some other new innovative career path.
Yeah. No, that's a great look at it too. It's the positives out of it, because I can think of, like, I have a bunch of agency vendors that do cold calling and email outreach, and our marketing engine is driven by technology, and those agencies are loving AI because they're able to robo, all sorts of things that they couldn't before. And when they would have hired 10 staff, they're hiring six. But
Yeah.
then using tech to build in, the other efficiencies. So yeah, no, to your point, absolutely. It's a potential boon for small businesses and for entrepreneurs to be able to do a lot more with less and less dollars out. So that's an interesting look at it as well. And I do think, like, I've been talking with people for several years now, where some industries sort of have a cycle and they flatten after a while, they plateau, or they scale back dramatically, like 30-40% layoffs. The industry continues, but it's a shadow of what it was in its heyday. And so there are people that might have been in that industry for 20 or 30 years who are now going, "Ah, they don't need me anymore." There's just, my analogy is always like, the pulp mill shuts down. And now that one town that survived on the pulp mill is like, what's Bob going to do? He's been a pulp guy for. So, anyways, again, I go back to this, and you're on this entrepreneurial trip as well, this journey of where do I go as a consultant, really? And how do I plug in? Where do I add value? And where's my tribe, so to speak? Who are my new people? Because my old people are doing other stuff. They don't need me in the same capacity. So to me, and I'm curious to see what you think on this too. I think there's a lot of mindset kind of garden work to do on our programming. what have we done for the first 20 or 30 years of our career? How do we shift gears to, in my own job, I often was client side as a talent acquisition manager and operations person, but the work was coming through from the sales team. And now that you're an entrepreneur, you realize, oh, I've got to put that sales hat on myself. I have to figure out that part of my business because I might be very skilled and talented at XYZ, but I need now to tell people about it. I need to have this component where, when you were internal, you were kind of insulated from those things because someone else's department brought the work in, right? And so I don't know if you work with people on that level, but getting them to shift into, when I put the entrepreneur hat on, it's like 5 or 6 hats. And then if you can scale your business to a certain point, you probably either offshore a hat or get someone to take one of those hats off your head, because then you're able to focus back to, what do I do best in my business, right? What's my real voice? What's my authenticity? And how do I sell that, market it, and put it in front of clients that go, that's exactly what we're looking for. I love this part of you, you know, rather than, oh, I got to go do the bookkeeping right now. And I'm, got to do too many things. Um, so tell me, Massimo, does that resonate with you yourself or with people that you're interfacing with as well? That sort of challenge of shifting gears and having to be the owner, and the buck stops at you.
It resonates with me so much in that the last 5 years, that's the journey that I've been on. And
Right.
in the first few years of starting my business, there were a lot of hats that I was wearing for the first time,
Yeah.
or for a very long time. Sales, operations, marketing, the bookkeeping, finances. Every hat, every decision needed to be made.
Yeah.
Um, Fast forward where I'm at now, I'm able to build a team around me and find people where that's their zone of genius. Those things that I was, carrying because I had to out of necessity. But I found early on reframing certain things to be really helpful for me. When I first started my business, the idea of selling didn't feel right. It felt a little uncomfortable. So I just decided I'll never do sales.
Right.
And that doesn't mean that I don't do it. It just means I always look at it through the lens of relationship building.
Right.
And my goal is to meet the right kind of people that I can help and help them. And if I can do those two things, then it converts to meaningful relationships and great work.
Yeah.
But it's just through the relationships. And if I'm not the right fit, then I refer them to somebody else. And I don't feel like I'm competing with anybody. I'm only competing with myself. So I've had to reframe certain things in order to make it appealing to me. And as soon as I could, be really clear about what are the things that I need to bring in help to do, because I'm not a marketing expert. I'm not the best when it comes to the operations around certain things. Um, the good thing is the world is abundant, and there are people that love to do the things that I hate.
Right.
You know,
Yes.
and so it gets to be a win-win to find them.
Right.
And not everybody needs to be the entrepreneur with the great idea. All those entrepreneurs need people around them that are vision aligned and want to be a part of creating something.
Yeah.
But each person needs to be clear about who they are and what they bring,
Yeah.
so that you're not looking for the permission, because those constraints that a corporate environment provides to people don't exist in entrepreneurship. And so you have to provide your own constraints, your own boundaries, and that takes work. And for people that are in this space in between, trying to figure out what they want to do next, you need to pause and do nothing for a little bit.
Mm.
William Bridges wrote a book 30 years ago called Transitions, which is, I've recommended this book more than any other, far more than even my own. And he talks about this concept of the neutral zone, which is after something has ended, but before something new has begun. And in the neutral zone, we don't have all the answers. We just have questions. And the idea is to ask those questions and to get clarity and to determine what it is that you need to let go of from the thing that ended. And what do you want to take forward? How do you want to control that narrative with the story you want to tell? And get clarity on where it is that you want to go next. But if you just run from one ending directly to a new beginning, you miss out on this opportunity to do some housekeeping.
Right.
It's like a move. Do you want to take everything from your old house to your new house? Maybe it's time to do a little bit of spring cleaning.
Right. Right. Yeah. Reflect. Take a breather. Yeah. Yeah. Good points. Massimo, I'm just conscious of the time. Are there I really want to know the sweet spot you like to fill. If I was a client, how am I going to interface with you, and what are you going to bring to the table? That, where do you plug in? Where do you like to plug in? Where's the spot where you feel here's where I add the most value?
I work with executives and executive teams for broader leadership audiences when the organization is serious about changing the way they work to be human first and acknowledging that that is an individual and internal game. Um, all people want to be seen, heard, appreciated, or dare I say, loved.
Mm-hmm.
And toxicity in organizations, unproductive conflict, a lack of trust are all stemming from people not feeling safe.
Right.
And it's not to say that the environment isn't safe. It is that the individuals do not feel safe. They feel threatened by something, and it is typically based on their relationship to themselves. And that's why self compassion is at the core of the work that I do, because when people have a better relationship to themselves, they can create their own conditions for safety and they're no longer threatened by the environment around them. And that's when you see innovation, resilience, collaboration all rise.
Excellent. Excellent. Great. And if people want to find you, obviously LinkedIn, any other spots, website, or?
My website's MassimoBackus.com. My book, Human First, Leader Second, is on Amazon and all other places that books are out there on the web. And for those listening, this idea of self-compassion seems out of place. This idea of self-love seems out of place in organizations and in businesses. And it is my fundamental belief that that is what we've gotten wrong for so long, is that it actually belongs at the core of it, because
Mm-hmm.
the only reason an organization exists in its form today is because of the people that are in it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like you and I could talk for another 30 minutes. But I want to wrap it today, and maybe we'll do a second chapter, further down the road, and reconnect and dig in a bit more on specifics. But I really thank you for being on the show today. I really appreciate it. And I hope some people connect, and, look forward to reading your book as well.
Thank you, Lance. It's been fun.
Excellent. Thanks again.